What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to show you why the 2020 presidential election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump will be easy to predict. This isn't clickbait. I really think it's going to be a lot easier to predict than a lot of people think, and let me tell you why. And before I get too far in my video, please subscribe right here if you haven't already, and hit the bell notifications if you haven't. So, as we know, in 2016, a lot of the state polls were wrong. Nationally speaking, the polls weren't that off, but on the state level, they were very wrong, and that's why all the models, all the pollsters, all the people in the media completely discounted Trump, and he ended up winning. So the main states where it mattered were Pennsylvania, where Trump outperformed the polls by 4.9, Wisconsin, where he outperformed the polls by 6.4, and Michigan, where he outperformed the polls in 4.3. So if we look at kind of all the models here, we can see that all the main models have Biden up, and I mean this shouldn't be a huge surprise. All the main models had Clinton up in 2016, and I mean Trump is probably at a pretty similar place than he was in 2016 in terms of like how much of a chance that the models gave him. So here, Trump wins 24% of the time. I think in the 2016 model on election day, Nate Silver gave Trump about a 28% to 29% chance. So what I want to do is look at all like the 6 states that I think will matter, 7 states here. Right now, the Republicans have 205 to the Democrats 222, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Obviously, but since both candidates are relatively old, there is a little bit of uncertainty there if either will be the nominee, even though I still think that they will be right now. So what I want to do is take kind of the average of the polls and then account for the uncertainty there. So I do, and this is kind of my thesis. I don't think that the polls are going to be more biased in 2020 than they were in 2016, just because I think they made a lot of changes to try to get the shy voter, shy Trump voter effect, and they've spent a lot more money investing in ways to try to weight their polls. And in 2016, on the state level, one of the reasons why the polls are so wrong is because they oversampled college educated voters and didn't sample enough non-college educated voters. The pollsters have already learned from these mistakes to a degree. So what I want to do is I'm going to account for this bias, and I'm going to make some kind of like still what I would consider toss-up states, and see if this still gives Biden enough. I guess I'll just label him black here. For some reason, it's not working. Okay. So toss-up states I will have in yellow. All right. So let's get started right here. Let's start with Minnesota. Or actually, let's start with Wisconsin. So right now, the 538 average of the polls gives Biden a 6.8% chance of winning. And if we look here, the polls are off by 6.4%. So this would still very narrowly kind of be in Biden's column. So, I mean, right now, Trump would have to just do a little bit to win if we are accounting for the same bias. So, next up, let's go to Minnesota and see what we have here. So in Minnesota, Biden's leading by 7.6, and the polls were off by 4.5. So doing some quick math, this would put Minnesota in the lean Democratic column. So if Biden gets over 270, or if Trump does the same, then I think the election will be pretty easy to predict. So going into Arizona, let's look here. And if Trump is up in the polls, then I'm not going to so let's see, Biden's up by 5. Let's see how much the polls are off in Arizona. They're off by 2 points. So we would still put this in the Biden column right here. Next up, let's go to Florida. Let's see how off the polls were in Florida. So right now, Biden's up by 2.4. In Florida, they were off by 1.9, but one interesting data point I want to look at is in 2018, the polls were off by between 3 and 4 points. So I really think we could still see the shy voter effect. So I don't want to put Florida in the Biden. This would very narrowly tilt towards Biden, but I still want to put it in the toss-up camp right now. All right, now moving on to North Carolina. And I am not just doing this for the sake that so we have Biden up by 1 point, and in North Carolina we can see the polls were off by 4.5 points. So we can definitely put this in the toss up category right now. And the reason why I'm not putting this in the Trump category right now is because that Biden is still leading in the polls. So what I am assuming is that the kind of real core or the 538 average of the polls, it's going to be that, and then I'm going to count for bias all the way to the 2016 bias, because I think that the bias in the polls is going to be right between there. I really don't think we're going to see many polls, or the 538 average of the polls be biased towards Trump. I just really don't think we're going to see that. So anyway, going to Pennsylvania, we can see that there was a 4.9 bias in the polls. So if Biden's up by more than 4.9, then we can put it in the column. So right now it's at 4.9. So we're going to have to include this as a toss-up right here. And moving on, we're going to look at Michigan as the final state. So Biden has a pretty substantial lead at 7.5, and so it was 4.3. So we can put Michigan in the lean Democratic column. So right now, accounting for the bias in the polls in 2016, we have Biden at 269 electoral votes. I didn't do the congressional districts in Maine or Nebraska, but right now we cannot predict that Biden is going to win indefinitely. If the polls converge where Biden is leading in Pennsylvania more than the 2016 bias, or the same in Florida, then I think it'll be pretty easy to predict, because I really don't think the polls are going to be more wrong than they were in 2016, because I just frankly don't think this is possible. So right now we cannot come to any conclusions right now, but I think that Biden, just based kind of looking on this model, has a very, very good chance to win. So I can't say with like 100% proof. But if Biden does like any better in any of these three states, then I think we can pretty certainly call the election for Biden. But on the flip side, if I had made these Republican, then it's a total tie. So I mean, really, right now the election is at a toss. So I definitely think Biden holds an advantage, because I don't think the polls are going to be as wrong as they were in 2016. But I think this will be definitely something that we need to look at, and we need to have a caveat when we look at the polls. We can't just blindly trust the polls. Read this article if you haven't already. And I think this will show you why. So I really hope that you like this video, and please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't already, and I'll see you later.